Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. I am back from Florida, where I spent a wonderful weekend at the Moms4Liberty National Summit, the first annual national summit. I was honored to have been invited to speak, and I went, and it was amazing. So I'm going to talk to you about that today. Hi, Adrian. And what I learned, what I want to share with you, that if you missed it, if you were there, you can just hear what I thought of it. But before I get into that, I would like to ask you to please hit the like button and share this video out so more people can come and join us live and ask questions and have a chat. If you are not yet a subscriber to this channel, please consider subscribing. It definitely helps me out a lot, helps me bring you more content like this. And also consider subscribing to my Substack, where I put these interviews and I put a little more of a write-up and I write articles and add more content and so on and so forth. So yeah, lots to talk about. First of all, I want to make clear that whatever you might be reading in the media about Moms4Liberty is probably, unless it's saying wonderful things, it's just so biased. I looked at what NBC was saying and what some other outlets were saying, and they can't resist trying to propagandize what Moms4Liberty is about. In a nutshell, what you have is a real grassroots organization. You have moms, and it really started as a few moms who came together during lockdown to start a book club. I didn't even know this story. This was amazing. They got together to start a club, sort of a reading club, to read our founding documents. This was so interesting to me. They started with the Declaration and they moved on to the Constitution, but it took them, a really long time. I think they said like over a month, maybe longer, to go through just the Declaration, going through, line by line, really understanding it, reading the writings of the people who contributed to it, who signed it, etc. And what stood out to me is after they did all of this work and studying our founding documents and our founding principles, they talked about freedom and noticed that it wasn't in the Declaration. The word freedom is not in there. I bet a lot of people don't know that. I mean, I have to confess, I was like, I never thought of it. I mean, I guess looking back, I kind of realize now it's not in there, but it's not something someone points out to you. Look, the word freedom is missing from the Declaration of Independence. But it is. You hear liberty, but you don't hear freedom. You don't read freedom. And freedom is only in the Bill of Rights in the First Amendment, freedom of speech. It's not mentioned otherwise. Liberty, though, lots. So they talked about how they looked up the origin of the words and what's the difference. There had to be a difference. So they would have, they would have used them interchangeably, or they wouldn't have leaned on one word so much. So they were talking about how liberty has, if it's a spectrum, and freedom on one end is kind of like hedonism, do whatever you want, right? And liberty is you do what you should, you do what you're free to do, but what is the right thing to do. Yes, every school should be required to study them, but I mean really study them, not tell you how terrible they are. And I don't think we have people qualified to teach that within our schools right now. I mean, there are a few, but not enough. So there's a moral foundation. Unless you think, it has to be Christianity, or it has to be Judaism or something like that, or even has to be religion. The point is natural rights, whatever you believe in, the concept of natural rights is what underpins the whole thing. The idea that's why they say nature and nature's God. And like I said, you don't have to believe in a deity to believe that there is virtue. There's something that makes something right and something wrong, something good and bad. And just because you're free to do something doesn't mean you should do it. And our founders were pretty clear on that. They were pretty clear on you should be free to do what you ought, not free to do whatever the heck, right? Lots of really bad things could come out of people just doing whatever the hell they want. And that's not to say that our founders wanted to have, people so restricted that they, that one government body would say, this is the only right way to be. Just they thought that if you were free, you would choose. There was a moral foundation because our culture was like that. But we have strayed, as we know. We've had people inside our country for a very long time who've wished that we were more like Europe, more like the Soviet Union, more like the communist and socialist countries, who are not happy with things the way they are, because with freedom or liberty, comes that responsibility to maintain it, to take care of yourself, not to take from other people, right? That's wrong. And a lot of people don't want that. They want to be able to just take and not have to work for it. And so they pointed out that de Tocqueville had said, America is good, or America's free because America's good. And if America stops being good, she will stop being free. And so here we sit on the precipice of that, right? And so the overall feeling I got from the conference was, this is a group of women, as disparate as they are, they come from, oh my God, looking around the room at any given moment, no matter where you were at this conference, at this summit, you would see people from so many different walks of life, so many different states, different cultural backgrounds, united in one goal. They start off individually saying, I want to do something about, first of all, medical tyranny, masks, vaccines, schools being closed. But then it evolved, right? It evolved into, wait a minute, what's going on in the schools? What are they teaching our kids? They're teaching them to hate our country. What the heck? This isn't good. This isn't healthy. This isn't good for my child. This isn't good for the country. And so it has grown. And what I was so impressed by is how these average everyday moms, really that's what they were, what they are, came together to just say, enough is enough. I'm not going to stand by and let this happen anymore. And without necessarily having any background in activism, with any background in organizing or any of this, just stuck their necks out and said, I'm going to do it. Now, some had obviously more organizing background than others, and they were often the ones who started chapters or, did the PR or did things like that. But the number of people who stepped up, who probably never imagined themselves doing anything like this, who really pretty much wanted to just be left alone to raise their families and live their lives and so on, but have not been allowed to do that because our government is not letting us do that. They're coming into our families, into our living rooms, into our bedrooms. I mean, they're everywhere, and our kids cannot escape. And so I was just so impressed with the energy, the passion, the commitment to our founding principles that I saw present at this event. And as I said, I didn't get the impression it was specifically, partisan, although certainly the governor of Florida spoke to us. Although there were lots of prayers and there was lots of fellowship in that regard. I, as a person I'm not a church going person. I'm not a religious person. I didn't feel left out. I didn't feel on the fringes, like I didn't belong there. I didn't feel, in fact, it was really moving. It was really inspirational. I believe in something. I just don't happen to put a specific name to it, right? I don't necessarily have a mystical set of beliefs, but I absolutely have values and a moral code that, guides everything I do. And it was really uplifting and motivating to be around a lot of people who were not afraid to say that. Not afraid to say, I don't care if you agree with me or disagree with me or like me or don't or whatever. This is what I stand for. And I'm going to hold my head up high and I'm going to take care of my kids. And I just, it was really nice because I've worked in this area for now, 2 years. And, you sit at this desk in front of this camera alone. And even when I have guests, I still feel basically alone. And to be in a space with hundreds and hundreds of other people working for the same thing I'm working for, fighting the same fight I'm fighting for, was incredibly inspirational, incredibly motivating. It made me want to go join a chapter myself, find the Mecklenburg County chapter head and just say like, okay, sign me up. What can I do locally? Because I really got a lot of energy out of the energy that I need. This is a tough slog, you guys. I mean, and I'm not saying for me personally, anybody doing this, anybody fighting to save this country. And that brings me sort of to the title of this particular update. You have skin in the game. The biggest message the most important message I came away with is you have skin in this game. Not you as a mom, you as a parent, or you as a dad, or you as a taxpayer. If you are alive and breathing on planet Earth right now and you care about liberty, you have skin in this game. It should matter to you how children are educated. It should matter to you how people are trained in their workplace. Any form of education, higher education, graduate school education, training in the workplace, what we're told on TV, that's a form of education, PR, information, whatever you want to call it. All of these messages, you do have skin in the game. I've had people ask me, why? First of all, why would I go participate in Moms for Liberty? I'm homeschooling my kids now. And I'm thinking like, I'm sorry, but my children are not islands. They don't get to like live in a bubble for the rest of their lives. They're going to have to go out there into the world where most people won't necessarily be homeschooled. Or if I don't fight for education, the people around them will be poorly educated and will keep going down this path towards tyranny. And my kids are going to get caught up in it. The education an individual person has protects that individual from some things, but it can't protect you from other people. You still have to care how they're educated, what they're learning. Oh, and P.S., I'm a decent person. I actually care about other humans and other children. I'm not a monster. It's not just about me. So yeah, of course I have skin in the game as far as how kids are educated going to public school. I also was a public school teacher. I obviously cared even if they weren't my kids. But I also want to talk to people who don't have children or their children are grown and flown or whatever. You have skin in the game too, because you live here. If you're alive, it should matter. Your money's being taken. Your money's being spent on this. If you live in another country, but you appreciate the strength of the United States, the fact that United States has been sort of an exit strategy for a lot of people from tyranny the world over. Once it's gone, it's gone. They were selling t-shirts that said liberty once lost is lost forever. John Adams. I bought one because it's true. And I have friends around the world who say, I care very much what happens in the United States, not from that, arrogant, like do this, do that, we're better than you point of view, but just I kind of hope to get there someday and live there and emigrate and have that be my home. I'm a great grandchild of immigrants. If the United States hadn't been here, what it was, I probably wouldn't have been born. And so how many children won't be born? How many things won't happen if the United States is no longer the United States? If the American dream is no longer a dream, if it becomes a nightmare, like Sri Lanka or Venezuela or the Netherlands at this point. So the name Moms for Liberty, well, it does say moms, and there were a lot of dads there too. They mean it. Liberty. And what also struck me is, people asked me this, they said, you're going to speak at a conference where people are trying to take back schools. They're trying to take back the public schools, and you're an abolitionist. Why are you doing that? And even some of the people in the organization went to Tiffany Justice and said, why did you choose her? Like, why did you choose her to speak? And she had faith in me that I understood the problem, that I understood how to, walk that line and speak to parents as parents and talk to them about education as education, and recognize the fact that public schools are not going to go away because I want them gone. And I don't want them gone. I want government out of the education business. I want parents to stop having to co-parent with government. And if you send your child to a school, to a place where there is learning happening in any kind of organized way, okay, call it school, call it whatever you want. If you send them to something like that, the government runs, you are co-parenting with the government. Well, guess what? Moms for Liberty is on the same page. They don't want to co-parent with the government. If there are to be public schools, I think the people I spoke with would like them to be run by the parents, would like them to be locally run, locally funded, locally managed. That's what I want. They want the Department of Ed gone. They had Betsy DeVos there. She said that. In fact, I have her book right here. This one. Okay, Hostages No More, right? And so the goal isn't, go in and take back the schools to indoctrinate something different, but continue to have them run by the Department of Education and whatever. It is truly grassroots to take back the schools from the end users of the schools. Now, getting to the specifics of that also impressed the hell out of me. There were people there talking about policy. Now, obviously, I talk about policy in terms of, my ultimate dream, my best case scenario is the money never leaves your pocket in the first place, except opt in. That there is a, shall we say, public option or an option that is local, that the people of your town have decided, let's start a schoolhouse or whatever. And it's so wonderful. And there's so much voluntarism going into it that you have an embarrassment of riches of people who are pouring money into it and it, voluntarily, and it's fabulous. And you want your child to go there. That's my best case scenario. Okay. There will always be foster children. There will always be immigrants. There will always be refugees. There will always be people who don't have the capacity to go and make their own thing all by themselves. I don't live in a fantasy world. Okay. I just want it to be more private. And by private, I just mean government isn't in charge of it, because no matter what, if government's in charge of it, it will be political. It will be political. So we need to get as much of the politics out of it and have it be more in the hands of the people who are using it. So that's my best case, but we're not going to get there right away. You know how we're going to get there quickest? Parental rights. And this is what Moms for Liberty is fighting for and understands, I think, better than so many groups that I've seen. They understand how to work on drafting policy and moving it through and getting it approved to protect parental rights, because it's not just education, you guys. The institution of education, is obviously violating our parental rights every day, but so is medicine. So is medicine. So is the law. There are pretty much every institution. We could even argue in some respects that entertainment and the media go out of their way to find loopholes around our parental rights. But education, medicine, the law, we need to be protected. And I know there are people out there talking about, well, what about the abusive parents? And what about these parents? What about those parents? We're not talking about, we don't write laws assuming people are bad. We write them to protect the good people. And then that way it's much easier to punish the bad, isn't it? But you have to protect the rights of good people first. Otherwise, how are you going to tell the difference? It's going to become a he said, she said all day long. So we have rights. Those rights come from nature, and nature's God, as it says in our founding documents. Our parental rights. And it just wasn't codified. Our founders probably didn't think, the culture was what it was. They didn't think they had to. Seemed like common sense, right? We didn't have public schools back then. Parents, it was a given, parents take care of that. And some towns had little schoolhouses, or it was the church or whatever. They got it done. We had extremely high literacy. Now you're going to say, well, the slaves didn't. Yeah, that's a different story. But that is true. This is the point. Then also the number of kids hurt by a few bad parents is way less than all the kids being hurt by crappy government. 100%. And all these justifications, we got to protect the kids from the bad parents. Using government? What? Have you looked at the foster system? Have you looked at the VA? I mean, these are adults being abused who fought for us. Just look at the DMV, the post office. I mean, come on. And that's partially private. They're not helping the kids in their care. They're not really doing a good job of that either. That probably should be private too. Private charities, etc. We have too many government regulations and restrictions, all justified with this. We have to help the people. How's that going? Well, it's not helping our kids when we have close to 70% functionally illiterate. It's not helping our kids when we have to keep dumbing down the grades and talking about equal outcomes and achievement gaps and all this junk after spending so much money, almost $1 trillion a year. And that's just on K-12. It's outrageous. So Moms for Liberty, thank you so much, AM, for the super sticker. I really appreciate the support so much. That Moms for Liberty gets it that we have to take it back from the bottom up. We don't have to be the majority. We just have to be smart. And that means fighting for parental rights. Because again, we conservatives, libertarians, people who are on, in my opinion, on the right side of the founding documents, the correct side, we are always playing defense. We're always playing defense. You just don't want this. You straw man, straw man, straw man. You hate poor people. You don't want to take care of kids. You want to, kill grandma, blah, 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 blah. And be like, no, I want this and I want that. I am done. No more defense. We want parental rights respected and protected, codified and protected. No more of this, sovereign immunity crap where, people say, well, just sue. Oh, yeah, it's so easy to sue the government. How about no? How about we have those rights to begin with that people kind of know, just like they kind of know I better not violate First Amendment rights, I better not violate those parental rights. That has teeth all by itself. Mom and dad don't need to, search high and low for an unwoke lawyer to represent them and then somehow dig up, $100,000 to deal with it. And there won't be attorney's fees after they get done using your money to attack you in court. No more of this. It needs to be, why are you opposed to parental rights? Why are you opposed to parents raising their own children? Please explain what good has come from the government parenting other people's children. Show us how well the foster system is working. And there are foster parents who are great. Those are private citizens. But then there's also human trafficking happening from the group homes that, DSS puts kids in. It's a bit of a mixed bag. But, how about those detainee centers? How's that working out? So this is, it's got to be put back on the people who are, trying to take control of parenting, take it from us. Why are you so opposed to parental rights? Instead of, why do you, they'll say, why do you hate, gays? Why do you hate this? Why do you hate that? Why are you so intent on talking about sex with my 6-year-old? Why are you so eager to discuss anal sex with my 10-year-old? Please explain why you, government employee, are so eager to interfere in the medical decisions of my child who is not of legal age to consent. They can't drink. They can't own a firearm. They can't go fight for their country. They can't smoke cigarettes. They can't vape. But they could take cross-sex hormones. Why are you so eager to change the sex of my child? By the way, you can't do that. You can't change their sex. Why are you so eager for them to put on a costume of the opposite sex? Why are you so eager to sexualize my child? These are the questions we need to be asking. Offense, not defense. And that's what I took away from this summit, is that this is a group of people who are done being nice. They're making it, what do they call, a respectful ruckus? I think that's what it was called. Yeah. But they're done being accommodating. There is a difference between being tolerant in that I'm not going to hurt you. I don't hate you. I am not looking to wreck your life. And no, I'm sorry. We don't need to hear about your sex life in my child's 3rd grade class. That's not about tolerance. Okay, you're not tolerating my right to parent. You're not tolerating my child's right to be innocent. You're not tolerating my right to disagree with you and how you live your life. I'm not going to stop you from living it, but guess what? This isn't your bedroom. This is the public school classroom or even a private school classroom. This is your place of work. And there are children here. Moms for Liberty is the group that had the genius idea to stand up and read the porn at the school board meeting. Read it aloud. And they got shut down. You can't read that. It's inappropriate. There are children here. Fascinating. Fascinating. It's in the school library. And we talked about this. James Lindsay was there. He talked about generative ideas, generative conversations. I talked about it. He talked about it from the top down, ESG, corporate stuff, right? And I talked about with SEL. They put these books in the library, you guys, so that your kids will be like, oh, what's this about? And then they go in the classroom. What's this about? The children are asking. It's not our fault that children have questions. I wonder why. I wonder why. And even then, I don't believe that. I don't believe that's even true. I believe their children are confused. The children are uncomfortable. And then the teachers pick up, are you uncomfortable? Well, let's survey you 57 times to see how uncomfortable. The children are uncomfortable. We have to, discuss the discomfort that we created. Yeah, let's do that. And I don't know. I felt like at this summit, I felt like people, even if they didn't understand every single thing I was saying, because it was a lot of information, guys, this SEL stuff that I talked about, it was a lot. And I tried to pause and ask questions. I think the video will be available on their website at some point of my thing. But they were eager to learn. They were eager to understand more. They were not, in denial. They didn't like it. It's not something anyone wants to hear, but people were like, all right, I want to understand. I want to fight back, and I want to know what I'm talking about. You've probably heard, there have been criticisms like they're trying to ban books. Nobody's trying to ban books. The Supreme Court has upheld repeatedly that time and place matter. Time and place do matter. You don't get to open a XXX bookstore right next to a school. So why do you get to have one in the school? Why do you get to have, not XXX, but close? Why do you get to have books that depict in graphic detail with pictures anal sex and oral sex in the school library? Why is that okay? That's not freedom of speech. No, it's not. And remember, the school does not have unlimited freedom of speech. Your child does. The teacher doesn't. The librarian doesn't. The school itself doesn't. They're not in there teaching Bible studies, are they? But you're allowed to go do Bible study at home. You're allowed to go to church. You have that freedom of speech. But no, they don't do that within the school building because why? Why? Because the government is not supposed to, institute some kind of religion or something like that. Well, guess what? All this garbage they are pushing on our kids is a kind of, it's a religion. I don't even want to call it a religion because that denigrates actual religion. And even though I'm not a religious person, that's not even in the same ballpark. It's culty. It's like, more like Scientology and that kind of stuff. Operant conditioning, things like that. And it's designed to brainwash the children. And I told the parents that. I told them that. I showed them video of a lesson. There was an audible gasp in the room when I showed them the video. Do you guys want to see the little video I showed them? I mean, it's very short. I can show it to you if you want to see it. If you haven't seen it, okay, you might find it very instructive in terms of what kind of thing they're doing to our kids. Let's see, I've got it in here. But basically here it is. This is from my presentation. And, okay, so I had this link and we're going to go to it. Somebody shared it with me on Twitter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do full screen. And if you cannot hear it, let me know because I have it set up with the audio so that you should be able to hear it.
Ignore the shape drawn on the card and only pay attention to its color. The color tells you the move to make. So this is what the colors mean. Blue means circle, okay? And then red means the triangle, and green means square, okay? So again, blue means circle, red, all right, now, remember, circle.
Okay, you can't hear it too well. Okay, but you can kind of see these kids. Can you hear me? You can hear me, right? Okay. So it's on Twitter, and it was just somebody posted it in their feed. I can give you the Twitter link if you want. But basically what is happening is you can see the teacher is showing a card with a shape and a color. And the color that she's telling the students, it's not what they see it is. This represents actually a square. This, it's like, don't believe your lying eyes. Now look at the kids. Look at their body movements. I'm going to go really slowly. And you can see how they're trying to do this. They're trying really hard to please the teacher. Look at this girl with her hands on her head. Like, oh my God, what is it? I don't even know. And then she asks them what skills they used to do this exercise. And what was so poignant to me is the little boy raises his hand. This is Moses. The audio was clear? Okay. Hang on a second.
Only pay attention to the color. Moses.
I also had to use my head because it wasn't cooperating, so I had to use my head and not listen.
Good.
I had to use self-talk and use my head because my head wasn't cooperating. My head wasn't cooperating, so I had to, tell it something different because it wasn't cooperating.
Natalie. Pretend the shape's not there, okay? Jaden.
Pretend the shape's not there.
Self-talk and remember the rules.
Self-talk and remember the rules. Self-talk and remember the rules. Ew. What is it? What did they tell me it is? Okay, I better say that. This is 1984 level stuff. So this is what I showed them in connection with my...
You really had to use all your learning skills on this game.
Yeah. All your learning skills, right? You had to learn all your learning skills. Is that a learning skill? No. So one of the things I made clear to them, and I think they got it, and I'll make it clear to you, is you cannot instruct... Let me repeat that. You cannot instruct social emotional skills. You cannot teach them. You can model them and reward the ones you want to see more of and have consequences for the ones you want to see, like the things you want to change. Okay. If somebody has poor social emotional skills, poor emotion regulation, there are things you can do to have a consequence for that if it's really antisocial or something like that. But generally speaking, even we parents instinctively know this. We just forget. When we want our kids to learn manners, what do? Say thank you. Now you could say, well, that's instructing. No, it isn't. And very often we don't even do the say thank you. We say thank you. We model it, and then we turn to the child. What do you say? Okay. Yes, it's a form of conditioning that we're doing, like you might do with, if you're training your dog or something. I hate to make it sound creepy, but when they're little that way, they don't understand the why I need to say please and thank you, but you want them to get in the habit of doing it, and it's a positive thing. So you do it. But when they do stuff like this, they're doing the same thing, but they're telling you, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't rely on your five senses to perceive reality, which is physically uncomfortable for a young child. Why? Because we have five senses and we have these perceptions at that age for self-preservation. The only way a child who is helpless, weak, helpless, dependent on bigger, older people to protect themselves is using their five senses, is using their sort of their inner voice, that my voice in my head to say, This makes sense. This doesn't make sense. So do you think it's any wonder the kids have been conditioned like this? By like, okay, I guess a boy could be a girl. Okay, I guess, this person who looks super creepy and is asking me strange questions about myself and my body and my preferences and this and that. That's fine. That's totally fine because that same person who told me the rules said it was fine. And then we have, secrecy and all that other junk. But this is how it starts. Shapes on a card. Not for every single kid. They might have other exercises, other lessons, but any school, they could look at this and then look a parent straight in the eye and say, this is good. This is how we teach them learning skills. No, this is how you brainwash them into trusting you to tell them what reality is and who they are, and tell them what they should feel. Tell them what they do feel, even when they feel something else. You rename it. You can do that because follow the rules. That's what this is doing. That's what this is doing. Conditioning. And anybody tries to tell you different, they're lying. At best, they're ignorant. Dangerously ignorant. But it gets me so fired up. This is abuse. This is abuse of the trust that you've put in them. This is abuse of the trust that children have in them. And as I told the crowd, you don't take your kid to school and be like, now beware. These people are going to ideologically groom you and tell you lies. And some of the kids might be really out there. And so you need to watch your back. But your kid would look at you. Why are you leaving me here? What? No, listen to the teacher. Behave. Follow the rules. You're going to learn lots of cool things. So they do this because they think you left me here all day, that you must trust them. Must be fine. No, it's not fine. And Moms for Liberty gets that. They get it's not fine. That none of this is fine, and they take it seriously, and they're not going to, poo-poo the books in the library. They're very serious about the books in the library, and they understand why. And it's not because they're prudes or they're squeamish. So if you read that in the press, there's nothing to do with it. They understand a child is a child, an adult is an adult. And certain things just don't have value, period. And some things don't have value for children. And I know I'll get a lot of pushback. That is your opinion. There is no objective set of values, and objective good and objective wrong, and disagree. You're entitled to disagree with me. But I think there is, when it comes to children and the education of children, there are things that are objectively wrong to put in front of them. Things that are developmentally inappropriate are objectively wrong to put in front of them. There's no good to that. There's no context in which that's okay. None. Zero. Yes, and that can be a question. Jean, why are you leaving any child in a school? Well, I don't, and many people are not. Many people are pulling their kids, but we have to understand. That's why I said you have skin in the game. There are kids in these schools whose parents we're not going to reach, who don't have parents. Like I said, there are foster kids. There are immigrants. There are, refugee kids. There are kids that will be educated by our government. And they're being increasingly educated to hate us and hate the country and hate everything it stands for. So you and I have skin in this game to I won't say fix it, isn't the right word, to prevent it, because it will hurt us all. It will hurt us all. They pointed out that Nikita Khrushchev once said, your grandchildren's children will live under communism and we won't have to fire a single shot. Pretty prophetic, right? Well, let's make sure it wasn't prophetic. And that's what Moms for Liberty is trying to do, is to make him a liar. Make that not true. And what I admire is their optimism. I really admire the optimism so much that it's contagious, you guys. It's contagious. I'm about as black-pilled as a person can be. If you watch this channel, if you consume my content, you know that I'm like, there's no fixing it. It's complete crap. And I actually believe that. I believe there's no fixing it. I think there is reaching us. I think there is a way to reach parents, not even the majority, but there's a way to reach a sizable minority, a vocal minority of committed, caring people who want better for our kids, who can do a better job. And there is a way to harness that energy and those skills, and from the bottom up, improve things for the kids who have to be there and create alternatives for those who want to leave. That I absolutely believe, and I think they do too, and that's what they're working on. So, yes, the poorest children will have the most adverse exposure to SEL. Remember, these are also kids for whom SEL was originally created. And I mean, back when it was like for 5 minutes, a halfway good thing. What I mean by that is as a remediation tool for kids growing up where they don't have a mom or dad teaching them how to handle their emotions or teaching them what, any of the skills that our kids who grow up with loving parents come by almost organically because they see them modeled. They don't have those role models, or they have negative role models. People teaching them to be violent, teaching them to be angry, teaching them to be resentful, teaching them to see the world as a scary, terrible place that they should be, fighting against all the time. So, these are the kids who come into school just unable to function around other people. So SEL originally was like, okay, in the absence of loving parents, what can we do to help these kids? Right? Problem is, it morphed. Maybe it was always meant to morph. I don't know. And it stopped being about behavioral, remediation for those kids and really helping them be able to function and get something out of school, because you do need to be able to compose yourself and not be constantly angry or anxious in order to learn. And it became a tool to use to reprogram all the children with this kind of conditioning that I told you about. So those kids are always going to exist. And as Rebecca points out, every taxpayer is funding this. So we have an interest in it. We have skin in the game. We have skin in the game. And this too. As goes the school, children goes the nation. Hitler said it. Stalin said it. Lenin said it. Mao said it. I mean, they all said it. They understood. If the dictators of the world understood that you take the little child, Lenin, you plant the seed and now give me 4 years and forget about it. Okay. Well, we understand that. We, in this fight, whether you're actually part of Moms for Liberty or you support the same things they support or you support me or whatever, that we get it. We get that. So anyway, what else can I tell you? Okay, so as far as speakers go, I mentioned the parental rights. There was a Florida representative by the name of Erin Grall. I encourage you to look her up and check out the work that she's done and the legislation that she's working on in the state of Florida. That I think should serve as a kind of model for other states. If you're of a mind to get involved in this kind of thing, consider joining your local Moms for Liberty chapter and get involved in policy. If you're not, or you're just a person who is into, policy, or people in the legislature or whatever, consider that. Support candidates who are for parental rights. That really should be your question. If this is of interest to you, you should just be saying, where do you stand on parental rights? And if they don't know what you're talking about, if it's not an immediate, absolutely 100% for it, and I've got draft legislation ready to go, you can take a look at it. I'm open to suggestions, but I really, this is my issue, or this is an issue that's very near and dear to me. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying you need to educate that person. If they're otherwise wonderful and this they don't know about, well, first of all, they're way behind the 8 ball and you need to find out why that is. How did they arrive at 2022 and they don't have a position on parental rights? Okay? This is the year of the parent. So you need to get looking for people to run. But don't let those local offices go. Now, I'm doing a 180-degree about face on school boards. They convinced me. I was all about taking back the school board is not going to do anything. It's not going to fix your school. And it's not. It's not going to fix the school. But what it is going to do is it is going to remove the people who are in the school board who are just rubber stamping the bullshit, rubber stamping the crap, or just sitting back silently and like allowing parents to be shut out, who are kissing butt to the unions, who are doing all of these things. And then of course they do say where the money goes, the school budget. They're removing them. So even if they don't get to advance something that is better, they're removing the toxic waste from something that isn't going to go away because Deb wants it to go away, and snap my fingers and boom, it's gone. It's not going anywhere. So listening to these school board candidates talk and meeting some of them and talking about what they're using their campaigns effectively, because that's where you have the most voice. We've talked about this on the channel, and I had Candace in to talk about this too. You won't necessarily get to speak much when you're on the school board because you can't really confer with each other and all that kind of stuff. And you'll have your time to speak, but that's not really where the speaking happens on the campaign trail. The speaking where you have a voice, you have a platform, people are listening to you, you're paying attention to what you have to say. You can educate the public about these issues. Even if you lose, you win. Even if you lose that, you win. And the next time, that'll be the next candidate, or maybe you run again and you win the next time. But you can, if you do win those seats, you remove somebody who is dead weight at best, toxic at worst. And when it comes to health policy, masks, vaccines, bathrooms, that is where it is at. So if nothing else, run for school board and they will teach you how. Moms for Liberty will teach you how. So if you're interested in that, definitely get with your local chapter. They'll teach you how to do that. And like I said, I mea culpa, 180-degree about face. I was like, don't bother, use your resources some other kind of way, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have the time, if you have the resources, you have the inclination, drain that little swamp. Okay. But the other offices, okay, city council or town council or whatever you have in your area, your library board, your local library board. See, conservatives, another thing conservatives have done, even in red counties. I've heard stories from people over the weekend. People have let those little civil servant offices go because they assume this is a red county. We're fine. I don't have to worry about it, right? We're all Republicans here. We're all conservatives. They wake up to find their librarian is like the wokest woke person ever and has filled the local library and the school library with porn. So, and what are you going to do now, right? The library board is made up of those people who went in and took it. That's how they do it. So Moms for Liberty has been studying their tactics and has figured it out and said, we just need to do what they do. It's really that simple. It's not rocket science. So action item number 2 after the, what is this? Where is it? Throwing sand. James says throwing sand in the gears of the machine to slow it down and give us time. Yep. It can be a thankless task and they will run you through they will, the press will eviscerate you, especially if you're in a blue area. But if you've got the stones to do it, go for it. But the library board, being on that, if you can elect people who are going to defund the library if they do crazy stuff, do that. Find ways to assert your views and make them defend themselves. Enough of this. I'm not a racist. I'm not a bigot. I'm not a homophobe. I'm not. Meanwhile, groomer says what? Groomer put what in the library? Child abuser has, ask me about my pronouns on their mug. I'm sorry, maybe they're not a child abuser of the physical sense, but they are of the cognitive sense and the psychological sense. They can have a big old smile and rainbows everywhere and a mug that's just like, ask me about my pronouns. It's abuse. It is called transference, projection. You do not put a child in a position to be your therapist or your validation machine where you just come in the morning and, ask me questions about my weekend. I had a hot date. Ooh. That's what's going on. They're using your children for their own self-aggrandizement and, validation and everything else. That's gross. If a parent did that, you would say, ew, that's abusive. And it is. But a civil servant does it and it's okay? No. So anyway, what else? So Aaron Grall, Grall in Florida. All right, check that out. Also, I would recommend that you take a look at and get to know the people who are on these various boards and different things right now and make sure, like I said, you understand their positions and so forth, right down to the granular level. But if you go before a school board, if you're going to go to meetings and speak, my advice is still the same as it was before. Don't go yell. They'll shut you down. Now there are First Amendment lawsuits going on or whatever, but that's tough. That's a tough slog. Don't go and yell. Do things like they did. Read from the books. Read from the books. Go with a specific ask or specific thing that you want them to, do or vote for or not fund or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Go with something specific and make sure you know the subject. Don't just pontificate. And I'm not saying there have been some brilliant speeches and people have said some great things and been very, very powerful, but it gets you on the news, but it doesn't necessarily get anything done. And that's why you find that thing, you find that agenda item that is in, an area of concern for you. Make it about funding. Why are we spending so much on these contracts? Do we have evidence that that this is successful, that this can be directly tied to academic results? Can I see it? I notice here in the budget that we spent blah, blah, blah on second step. Why? Where's the evidence that that works? Can I see it? Can we see it? We're spending a lot of money out of the budget on that. I see we've just hired, person. What are they going to do? And can I read their job description? What is the process that people go through to become school officials when they are not otherwise certified or hired by the district? Can you explain to me how many people the school district currently has working in a school official capacity who are not employed by the district or paid by the taxpayers? How many private corporate employees are now school officials? If they can't answer these questions, and they won't answer these questions, everyone's going to hear you asking and they're going to be like, wait, what? You mean there's employees of Panorama and Second Step who are school officials? What? What's that all about? Oh, and you can go with little handouts prepared. Yes, here's the handout. This shows that the budget, they had a contract for $500,000 to Second Step. Curious about where that went. Why? Why did we need this? What was the need behind this? Who decided it? The other thing that you can do is my brain's blanking because I just read this comment. I'm sorry. Let me first read the comment. Ray says, is there a list of questions to determine what the kids have been taught? I have out-of-state step grandkids whose parents act like they know everything, really in denial of what I tell them. Yeah, you'd have to get into their Chromebooks and you'd have to see it. The only thing I would suggest to you to do is go to the website of the school district for the schools they attend and do a general search on equity or search on social emotional learning. Go to if there's a resources tab, click on that, see if there are recommended resources. But you could ask the parents, what are the names of the teachers? Just curious what their names are. I like to see what they put on their social media. You should be following your teacher's social media, by the way. All of it. And not just your child. Follow the teacher, the superintendent, the director of DEI, the librarian, all the people involved in the library, every single school board member. Follow their social media like your life depends on it. Create a group. If you're on Twitter, and you should be, I'm sorry, I know people I hate Twitter. Okay. But if you want to find out, if you want to keep tabs on what's going on in your kid's classroom, these people have no filter. They love talking about the professional development trainings they've been to. They love bragging on all the stuff they're putting in their classrooms, and they don't think you're watching. Where do you think I get some of my best information? Parents who are on Twitter for only that purpose. They don't even participate in Twitter. They created an account with some no-name thing, and they went and created a little list. You can create a list, and they put all the people involved that they could find accounts for in their kids' education in the list, and they check it every single day. Every single day. And then when they go to a school board meeting and they say, can you explain? And sometimes they print it out. Can you explain to me why and you can't name their names. They get very testy if you're at a school board meeting and you name, Mrs. So-and-so or Joe Blow or whatever. So you have to sit there and say a third grade teacher or a teacher in your employ or one of your librarians. I mean, you got to leave their names out of it. I don't know. They'll get really twitchy about that and they'll turn off your mic. But can you explain why they tweeted out this message? Blah, 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 and you read it. And everybody else in the room will go, oh, there was or you bring it on your phone, a little video. It's like, I love to tell my kids to ignore their parents, blah, blah, whatever it is, whatever they did out there, grab it, go to the meeting, stick it in front of the microphone. Can you explain? I'm just curious why this is okay. Can we talk to the superintendent? But honestly, I wouldn't do that at the school board meeting. The thing I would do before that, and it's what I told the parents at Moms for Liberty, is they asked me, what do I do? Okay, what should I do first? Okay, beginning of the year, if you have to put your kid in public school, you don't wait for that conference and you don't rely on parent teacher night. You ask for a meeting with the teacher and you go in face to face and you say, I just want to meet you and talk to you and ask you a little bit about your approach to classroom management and your approach to things like social emotional learning and what you think about it and what you think about, things like social justice, whatever. And if you just go in like that with a big smile on your face, like, can you just tell me what your approach to these things is? And say, I want your honest answer. Like, really, I want your honest answer. I'm not, just tell me what it is. No judgment or anything here. I just want to know what you genuinely think my child, the most important thing in my life, is going to be in your class all day. And I need to know your personal thought, not the school, where you personally stand, because you're going to be the other most important person in my child's life all day, especially elementary school. And let them answer. Don't say anything. Don't say a word. Just let them answer and ask more questions. Ask more probing questions. If they say, well, I believe that we have a role to play in making the world a better place and equity and this and that. And you say, can you give me your definition of equity? I'm really curious what your definition of equity is and how will you be trying to achieve that in the class? And what kind of lessons will you be using in order to pursue this? And what is your stance on things like equity audits? And, where do you stand on this and that and the other? And at what point in the curriculum will you be introducing things like gender ideology, or will you not? And you might get lucky and you might find a teacher saying, well, I don't have much of a choice. They're making me, just between you, me, and the fence post. Really wish I didn't have to do it, but you didn't hear this from me or whatever. I mean, they might. I doubt it. But if you get somebody who sits there and they're like a teacher on TikTok saying very haughtily, this is very important to your child. Well, my suggestion is run. But wouldn't you rather know? My daughter had a second grade teacher like that. And I unfortunately didn't find out until about a month into the year, when this 25-year-old girl called me on the phone after I'd sent her an email asking why she postponed a presentation that all the kids had to prepare for. And my kid was anxiety ridden, like, so we practiced. She was so ready to go. She was ready. Teacher comes in and says, because there were like, I don't know, 5 kids or something who weren't done with the presentation. Now you can guess who they were. But anyway, she said, okay, we're postponing it because not everybody's done on time. So my kid was frustrated. She comes over, she says, Mom, I was ready. I was so ready. And then just because these few people weren't done, she's like, why couldn't they let us go when we were ready to do it and then have them do it at a different time? I didn't know the answer. What do you tell a second grader? It's like, I don't have an answer. So I wrote an email and I said, I'm just curious what prompted you to make this decision. And I want to share with you the impression that it made on my child, because she now thinks that deadlines don't matter. And she's very frustrated that she was given a deadline and she met the deadline and she was nervous and she practiced. And it was like, poof, doesn't matter because other people didn't do it. Other people didn't do what she did. And I didn't write it. I wrote it as nicely as I possibly could while still being firm. And I got a phone call. And she said, this is Miss blah, 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 whatever. I said, oh, hi. I'm at dinner. And I said, she's like, is this a good time? I said, well, actually, we're just sitting down to dinner. She's like, well, I just have a moment. I just need a moment of your time. I was like, okay. And she said, I got your email and I just think that you need to understand about your daughter. And I was like, I'm sorry. And she said, did she tell you? Did she tell you what happened today? And I was like, no. And she said, well, I postponed it like your daughter told you. But then because I got your email, I went to her today and I picked her first. And I said, okay, you're ready. You do it. And she was not ready. She refused to do it. So like is the tone. I said, I'm sorry. Are you seriously telling me that you got my email and your response to my email was to call on my daughter first the next day with no warning at all? And then to get angry at her and at me because she wasn't ready to go right then when you ambushed her, and I'm sorry, what? Well, I just think you need to know what she did. And I said, this conversation is over. And I hung up. And I went into the school the next day and I said, you will be moving my daughter out of that class immediately. Like immediately. I'm not leaving this building until you move my daughter to a different class. She will not have this teacher anymore. And I told them what happened. They were like, well, we don't usually do that. I'm like, you will be doing that. It's not optional. And I know people talk about the angry mom and this and that, but I told them, I said, you have a child teaching children. This is unprofessional. This is a monster. If she had a bone to pick with me, call me and yell at me. But she took retaliation on my child because my email bothered her. This is the kind of person you might have as your teacher. Don't wait a month then. Find out immediately what kind of person you're dealing with. Follow them on social media. You have no choice. This is the choice they've left us with. You can no longer assume these people are above board. You just can't. So yes, it's true. You know, I'm a government school abolitionist, but this is part of why. It's a full-time job for us parents to make sure our kids are not being straight up abused. And I know I'm stretching the word abuse like a rubber band here because you hear the word and you think beatings and sex. And I want you to think about the kid with happy home life, good parents who love them, and they think like people are good. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, people at church, whatever. They go into the school and somebody's playing this kind of bullshit ambush game, picking on them. My daughter told me, I said, what happened? She came home in tears. In tears. But she wouldn't tell me what happened. Now I knew what happened. So then I went back to her and I said, tell me exactly what was said. Now that I know what happened, tell me exactly what was said. The teacher said, so I hear you're ready to go. Let's go. 7-year-old kid. Was that necessary? I was a first and second grade teacher. Not in my wildest dreams. There were parents I didn't care for. There were kids I didn't care. I mean, I'll straight up tell you, there are kids you're like, never would I do such a thing. Ever. It's not about you. It's not about you. You're there to do a job. And increasingly, these children think it's their personal project to use your children. So you've got to, follow and pay attention. And that's what I told them to do. And then I told them to have a meeting with the curriculum director and ask how they teach these things across the subjects, within the subject, what kind of books they're choosing. And they'll push back. They're not going to say yes to these meetings. They're not going to go, absolutely, let's meet a week from next Tuesday. They're not going to do that. They're going to say, why? What do you want? They're going to bring casts of thousands. They're going to bring, a whole frigging team of people to intimidate the crap out of you. That happened to me. I asked to have a meeting and they brought the teaching team for your child. I'm like, my child has a team? No, kid doesn't have a team. They just want to load up with as many people as possible sitting across from the one parent or the mom and dad or whatever, because it's intimidating. And they figure that's going to shut you up, all of these so-called professionals. And this kind of advice given to people at Moms for Liberty was well received. They were like, all right, let's do it. All right, let's go. They call themselves joyful warriors. I love it. I freaking love it. I was like, these are my people. These are my people. You call yourself warriors. And not in a warrior like, you're going to literal war, but you are out there protecting your children. You guys know Billboard Chris. He's been on my show twice. He stands out there with the billboards that say things like children cannot consent to puberty blockers. Stands there and has conversations with people. That's a joyful warrior. There's somebody out there who's defending the right thing to do. The right thing to do. Our kids can't speak for themselves, not when they're real young. Now, as they get older, my advice would be involve your kids more. By the time they hit about 5th grade, you should be talking to your kids about how to defend their own boundaries, how to speak up for themselves, how to say, where's the American flag? How come we don't have an American flag in the classroom? Just curious. I would like an American flag. And the teacher won't put one there and say, well, there's a rainbow flag and a trans flag and a Black Lives Matter flag and this flag and that flag. I want the American flag. I'm an American. And that represents me. And I don't feel represented in this classroom. You know who has the most power to say that? Your child. Not you. Not the school board, not anybody else. You. I mean, your child, rather, the kid. The kid says that and says it enough and says it often enough. And then you say, why are you denying this child their representation? I thought we were all being culturally sensitive and, you know, culturally relevant education. Well, my child identifies as American. It's a very big part of his identity. And he wants his flag. Do it. I say do it. Do it. I would love to see them say no. And then you go to the press and you say, you know, whatever. They said no. But you can involve your kids in this. I don't mean use them. I'm just saying, you know, like talk to them early and often about boundaries. Talk to them about the Constitution. Talk to them about their liberty. If they're not going to do it in school, you do it. And then if you have to send them to school, send them prepared to use their liberty, to defend those boundaries, to ask for their own representation. And they can't say no. Put them on the damn defensive, not you. I'm done with this, you know, people who care about this country and who care about children having to, you know, justify it. Why we want kids to remain innocent. Why we want kids to be kids. It's ridiculous. I mean, well, this one's non-binary and that one's asexual or this one's pansexual. You're pre-sexual. You're quite literally pre-sexual. If you're prepubescent, you don't have a sexuality. You just don't. This is Kinsey. This is BS. This is a pervert who has pushed the lie that little children are sexual. No, I'm sure there are a lot of pedophiles that would like them to be, but we don't need to break down our kids' barriers so that they feel like, well, I guess that's normal. No, it's not. Don't be afraid to say that. No, it's not. And guess what? The word normal, we need to bring that one back. We need to bring that back. There are things that are normal. There are things that are not normal. Abnormal. There is such a thing as abnormal psychology. It didn't go away. It's not an identity. It's not a lifestyle. It's a problem. And a lot of the people in classrooms today have some abnormal psychology. They have some personality disorders. Oh, yeah, they do. And yet we're putting them in charge of our children. Normal. Normal is to look at the biology of the male and female human and say there's a male and there's a female. That is normal. It's normal. There's not another word for it. It's not assigned at birth. It's not some other fancy term that makes people who don't like normal feel better. That's their job. All of this stuff about coping and this and that, they're putting the obligation to cope, to deal on the majority of people who live in reality, not on the people who don't. That's ass backwards. So I felt like I was in really good company over the weekend, and I was very honored to be there. And I hope I will be asked back at some point to speak again. I was very nervous. I know you guys probably don't believe that, but I was incredibly nervous, and I'm glad that it went well, because it was a big responsibility to get these points across to an audience of super motivated people. Never have I had, you know, that many people gather in one place at one time while I was speaking to who were that motivated to act on what I was saying. So that's a huge responsibility. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you who are watching this broadcast, either live or on replay, for listening to me, for bringing me to this point, for helping me be known to Moms for Liberty enough that they would even ask me to be part of this weekend. That I owe to my audience. So thank you. And I will keep doing this. I will keep producing content. I will keep hammering away, trying to find, solutions and give you tips and as best I can. And obviously helping those leave who are ready to leave. Those who are not, I'll just keep trying to help as best I can do. but we've got to protect these kids and take back our children. We're not going to take back the schools, but we can take back our kids. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And keep an eye on the Moms for Liberty website for the recordings of the weekend. It was really amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody. And yep, get those flags in the classrooms. I think it'll be great. Have a great afternoon.